So, time for us to bring to you some East Africa roundup right away, and we'll look at what's going on now, where former President of Kenya, talking about Uhuru Kenyatta, has indeed arrived in DRC to negotiate a peace deal between M23 and DRC government amid the ongoing crisis rocking the country. Now, do not forget too that Uhuru Kenyatta was part of the AU members alongside Nigeria's former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, in mediating and also helping out with the Tigray crisis. But this time, our guest, East African journalist Darren Bartlett, tells us more about it. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Not bad, well, not bad. You. So go ahead and tell us this mediation and what are we to expect.
It's not the first time that Uhuru Kenyatta has been at the forefront of seeing that the conflict in DRC, is brought to zero. But he's had this even earlier months before he left power, where he hosted the leaders of the M23 in Nairobi, and they had a conversation. However, they never came to conclusions at that point. But this time round, he went to DRC. He went there 3 days ago, and he visited different leaders. He met the Senate. He met the leaders of the North Kivu and other regions that are affected by the conflict of the M23, and not only the M23, but also the other armed groups that make up to over 100 different groups. And in his meetings, he kept on emphasizing and encouraging them to put down their arms so that they forge a way and find at least a political solution to stabilize the eastern part of Congo. And he was very clear, and he reminded the press that before he left power, when he met these people, when DRC came into East Africa, DRC came, but with certain conditions that whereas East Africa wants to benefit from DRC, DRC also wants to benefit from East Africa in terms of stabilizing the country. And when he was leaving power, of course, he handed over also his presidency of the East African Community to President Nyamishie of Burundi. And that is the point where he was appointed as a facilitator to see through the peace process of DRC. So he did give out so many details of what the conversations he had with different leaders in the region. But what is important to note is that on the 21st, which is going to be Monday, we're going to see some leaders of M23 go to Nairobi, where Uhuru is going to be, and talk to them about the process. But there are so many conversations happening at different levels, and not only as the East African community headed by former President Uhuru. You'll see conversations such as President Lourenço of Angola. He was in Rwanda meeting, President Kagame over the same issues. Because, at first, when such issues happened, we saw President Lourenço, who was the one mediating peace between Rwanda and DRC over the same thing, about M23, because Rwanda has been accused of supporting M23. And so you'll find that there are so many meetings happening at the same time, but the end goal is going to be, or what everyone is now looking out for, is what is going to come out from the meeting that is going to happen between the M23, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the government of DRC on the 21st of November, on Monday.
This is great news, just also reminding us of the fact that there has been some peace deals happening all around the continent. We've also looked still in East Africa, the Ethiopia-Tigray crisis. We've seen that since they've signed the peace deal on the 2nd of November, first international aid has just gotten to Tigray, the first since 2 years after this community that comprises just 6% of Ethiopia has been really damaged by the effects of the war. But now let's move away from that and talk about trafficking in East Africa. We've seen a number of videos online of domestic workers pleading for help to be rescued. Now, some are in the Middle East Authority prisons, and the majority of them are from East Africa. Let's talk about how these employees ended up in these situations and what efforts are being made to return them to their home countries.
Now, you will notice that a number of these videos, especially the people who are posting these videos, calling out for help, people are coming out and talking about mistreatment in Asia and also Thailand, have always gone in ways that are not understandable by the government. And they've come up so many ways of which these people are given these jobs. A case in point is the trafficking that was that was done through Thailand to Myanmar. There happened to be a job posting that was up there. They wanted teachers who can speak fluent English, some languages like Kiswahili, some languages like Chinese. And you find that East Africa, basically, if you go back to history, they've been embracing Chinese. So there are some actually East Africans who can speak some Chinese, a little here and there. And they applied for these jobs and they found themselves in Thailand. And the so-called employers got their passports and took them to Myanmar. Now, a rescue was made and those girls have been brought back. But also, if you look at what's happening in the Middle East, it is something very, I would say it has now gone out of hand. Governments have really tried to discourage people from applying for jobs that they find online. And they're encouraging people to go, if you want to actually get a job in Middle East, how about you just go to Middle East, find a job manually, and then you come back, get a visa, and go back. Because they cannot, at this point, whereas governments are being blamed for not doing much to stopping this habit of happening, they cannot just stop them because people are being scammed. You find someone gives you a good deal and says, look, how much are you earning in Uganda? I'm earning $100 per month. I'm going to give you, then there's a counter offer of, I'm going to give you $1,000 per month. And someone gets excited, uses backdoors without registering through.
All right. Let's head now to Uganda very briefly. I mean, President Yoweri Museveni on Tuesday has extended that he extended the lockdown in the affected districts for another 21 days, and also has prohibited contacts with Ebola patients from leaving the country. And just this morning, the newspaper says that the Ebola vaccines for this particular strain, Sudan strain, will definitely arrive. So expectancy is indeed high. What's your take on this story, very briefly?
Quickly looking at it, I would say that the situation, yes, it's not fair. It's not.
Unfortunately, network there. I'm sorry, but these things do happen. We barely have controls over this network. But I want to say thank you so much for. Okay, it seems you're back.
Yeah,
all right, go ahead.
Apologies for my network.
Go ahead, no problem. Let's go.
Quickly looking at the Ebola situation in the country is that what started in 2 districts has now spread to over 8 districts. And this is where the president comes in and says, no, he is locking down other districts, but also extending the lockdown to 21 days in the places that they identified, the virus.
Very interesting. Well, let's hope that when the vaccine does indeed arrive, it would put an end to all of these fears and, of course, curb the spread of the Ebola virus. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, as usual, every Friday. It's a great sport to have you always. All right, so you still watch at Breakfast Central. Olive, we've taken a look at some of the stories.
Big stories, exactly. I mean, with this last one, it's very important to mention that the people of Uganda must collectively put hands together to prevent the spread of the Ebola virus. One of the challenges that the government has mentioned in the fight against the Ebola virus is the misinformation, people not believing them. And even when the lockdown has been announced, President Yoweri Museveni had talked about how those people who are moving around with logs of wood help people to escape. So he's also extended the lockdown to cover those trucks that are moving logs and saying, you know what, you're not going to continue this because people are using these trucks to escape. But at the end of the day, it's a collective effort. It's not one person. But we're excitedly looking forward to the vaccines, the Sudan strain vaccine of the Ebola virus arriving in Uganda. We'll be bringing up more stories. Next week, Friday, we'll do the East Africa Roundup as we talk about the biggest stories that we've discussed over the week in East Africa.